I was having lunch with my colleague Trevor when Mike, another co-worker, slid into the booth with urgency written all over his face. "Craig, I need to show you something," he said, skipping any small talk. "But you have to promise not to lose it here." I braced myself. In over a decade of practicing law, I knew those words never preceded anything good. He placed his phone on the table and pressed play. The voice I heard first was unmistakably my wife's, Sophia, laughing. Then her words hit me like a gut punch. "I've slept with 3 guys from the office this month alone. Craig has no clue. God, he's so clueless." Another woman's voice asked if she was worried I'd find out. "Please," Sophia said. "He's too busy and too trusting. Besides, the prenup expired last year. If it all goes sideways, I get half. Win-win." Mike had overheard her the previous day while sitting behind her table at lunch. He started recording once he recognized her voice. He knew I'd need the evidence. Trevor and Mike watched me carefully, expecting an explosion. But I'm not that kind of man. My strength is in staying calm, thinking several steps ahead. I thanked Mike, asked him to send me the audio, then finished my sandwich. That evening, I went home and kissed Sophia hello like nothing was wrong. We had dinner. We watched our shows. I smiled while internally cataloging everything of value in our home, already mapping out how I dismantled the life she took for granted. The next morning, I called a private investigator I trusted, Stanley Barker. I gave him everything he needed, names, places, routines. Then I quietly moved $10,000 out of our joint account, enough to cover the initial work, but not enough to alarm Sophia. For 3 weeks, I played my part. I went on dates with her, had sex, always with a condom, something I suddenly insisted on. I cooked, I laughed, I listened to her stories. Meanwhile, Stanley did his job. He gathered hotel receipts, surveillance photos, timestamps, and credit card charges she couldn't explain. We had proof of her with multiple men. Then I retained Jessica Clean, a fierce divorce attorney outside my firm's network. Someone Sophia couldn't trace. I laid everything out for Jessica. She examined it all, eyes gleaming. "Let's wait," she said. "Wait." I asked. "She's planning to file." "Let her. It'll work in our favor." So I kept up the charade, made copies of all important documents, moved irreplaceable records to a safety deposit box, monitored our finances. 3 months later, it happened. I came home to find Sophia sitting at the dining table with a folder. "I'm not happy, Craig," she began. "I haven't been for a while." She pushed divorce papers toward me, citing emotional distance, personal growth, and the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. She wanted alimony, a lot of it. I looked appropriately stunned, told her I needed time to process. She agreed, smugly confident that she held all the leverage. That night, I called Jessica. She filed. "She's asking for support." "Perfect," Jessica said. "Now we bury her." Jessica filed a counterpetition and contested the alimony request on the grounds of infidelity. When Sophia's attorney questioned the accusation, Jessica just said, "We'll present everything in court." Sophia doubled down on her lies, claimed I was paranoid, accused me of emotional neglect. I never flinched. I was the picture of restraint and heartache. During discovery, we released everything. The audio recording, fully legal in our state, which allows one-party consent in public spaces, Stanley surveillance files, receipts, messages, everything. Jessica subpoenaed texts from her lovers, many of whom, once exposed, willingly cooperated. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with little tolerance for deception, was unimpressed with Sophia's defense. As the hearings unfolded, the reality of Sophia's infidelity began circulating around her office, mostly through the coworkers she had entangled. Her professional and personal life began to collapse. At the settlement conference, the judge was clear, given the overwhelming evidence and the original prenup, which, though expired, demonstrated initial intent. She wouldn't entertain an alimony request if the case went to trial. She encouraged us to settle privately. After a quick recess, Sophia's lawyer returned with a very different tone. They withdrew the alimony demand and accepted a settlement. I kept the house, both cars, and roughly 65% of our joint assets, a far cry from the clean 50-50 she had expected. As we walked out of the courthouse, Sophia approached me, her face wet with tears that had been absent during her dramatic divorce announcement. "Craig, please," she whispered. "I made a mistake. I don't know where to go, what to do." I looked at her for the first time in months and said, calmly, "That sounds like a you problem. You made your choice. Now live with it." The following weeks were consumed with finalizing paperwork and transferring property. Sophia, once she grasped the full weight of her mistake, began a frantic effort to undo the damage. She contacted mutual friends with her own version of the story, appeared at my office without warning, only to be escorted out by security, called my parents and siblings, pleading for their help. When none of that worked, she shifted tactics and began issuing threats. She said she'd accuse me of abuse, but I had recorded our recent conversations in anticipation of exactly this. She threatened to destroy my professional standing, though by then news of her multiple affairs with colleagues had spread widely. At one point, she hinted at self-harm. I took that seriously and reported the concern to the proper authorities. Throughout all of this, I kept my composure. I never raised my voice or engaged publicly. I gave her nothing she could use against me. 2 weeks after we finalized the settlement, I got a text from Sophia's number. "I'm sleeping in my car tonight. It's cold. Please, Craig. I have nowhere to go. Show some mercy." I didn't block her number. I was keeping a record for legal purposes in case I needed a restraining order. But I didn't reply either. The divorce itself followed the standard timeline. I retained the house, but sold it soon. After there were too many painful memories tied to it, I bought a smaller place in a new neighborhood and changed all my email and social media accounts. I kept my phone number for work reasons, but filtered her messages into a separate folder. About 6 months later, I ran into Mike, the colleague who had recorded Sophia's confession. He'd moved to another firm but stayed in touch with our old team. When I asked if he'd heard anything about her, he nodded. She had been fired after an internal ethics investigation related to her relationships with subordinates. She moved back to her hometown and took a job in retail. She'd tried dating one of the men from the office, but he lost interest when the upscale lifestyle disappeared. I listened but felt no bitterness, just a distant sense of justice being done. Mike then said something that stayed with me. "People still talk about how you handled it. Ice cold, no drama, no outbursts, just precision. It was impressive." I thanked him again for that recording, paid for his coffee, and left. As I walked to my car, I realized I was genuinely happy for the first time in a year. Not because of what happened to her, but because I had gone through the worst betrayal of my life without losing my identity. That night, I got an email from a woman I'd met at a professional development workshop. She was intelligent, accomplished, and completely unconnected to my past. I replied and suggested dinner. Life moves forward, and this time I was moving forward clear-eyed and with a prenup that would never expire. 3 months later, I posted an update. I didn't expect the level of support I received from people reading my original account. Since then, Sophia's professional fallout continued. Her firing from the HR role came directly from the company's investigation into her multiple inappropriate relationships. 2 of the men she was involved with were married and are now in divorce proceedings. One was formally disciplined but retained his job. Another was quietly moved to a different department. As for me, I've gone on several dates with Claire, the woman from the workshop. She's a corporate litigator, sharp and completely independent. On our 3rd date, I told her the basics of my divorce. She responded with calm understanding, then shared her own past struggles. It wasn't dramatic, just honest and refreshing. My divorce attorney, Jessica Clean, has become a good friend. She recently invited me to speak at a seminar on collecting evidence in infidelity cases. I agreed with the condition that my identity be protected. Some people asked how the experience affected me psychologically. Therapy helped. I've had to work on rebuilding trust, not in a paranoid way, but with healthy boundaries. It's a work in progress. The surprise benefit? My career has never been better. The discipline I developed during the divorce carried over into my work. I've taken on several complex cases, and am now on track to be considered for partnership. Some criticize me for being too cold, too calculating. Maybe so, but emotions don't always serve you well in high-stakes situations. I chose to be strategic rather than reactionary, and I don't regret it. If you're going through something similar, remember, document everything, consult professionals, and don't let toxic people dictate your future. The real victory is building a better life without them. 1 year later, I shared a final update. The divorce has long since been finalized. All the paperwork, all the accounts done. I don't hear much about Sophia anymore, but word is she's working retail management in her hometown. She doesn't occupy any space in my mind anymore. Neither love nor hate, just absence. Claire and I are still seeing each other, taking our time. We've talked about moving in together, but have chosen to keep our own places for now. We both value our independence, and neither of us wants to rush into anything without clear, shared expectations. I've had some awkward run-ins with the men involved in Sophia's affairs. We keep things civil and distant. Nobody wants to relive that mess. The house I bought after the divorce has become my sanctuary. I've renovated it to reflect who I am now, not who I had to be in my marriage. Someone once asked if I regret not confronting Sophia immediately after I heard that recording. I don't. That kind of emotional reaction would have given her time to hide money or spin a false narrative. Strategic patience worked better. Another common question. Do I regret the 8 years I spent with her? No, those years shaped me. I learned about boundaries, trust, and most of all, self-respect. I don't regret the time. I regret not recognizing the truth sooner. To everyone who followed this journey, thank you. Your advice, support, and even criticism helped. What I took from this wasn't just a legal victory or professional boost. It was to rediscover myself when everything else had been stripped away. And I liked the person I found. A quick legal clarification. The recording was admissible under our state's one-party consent law, as Mike recorded it in a public place with no expectation of privacy. The text messages were gathered through formal legal discovery, with two affair partners voluntarily providing their conversations with Sophia. The asset division, ultimately a 65-35 split, followed the state's equitable distribution laws. Infidelity factored in but wasn't the sole cause. The length of the marriage, financial contributions, and other circumstances all played a part in the final outcome.